Nothing shakes the hip-hop world quite like watching one of its loudest commentators unravel before our eyes. DJ Akademiks, once a self-styled voice of the culture, has found himself in a firestorm that seems destined to leave permanent scars on his reputation. For years, he was known for sensational streams, off-the-cuff commentary, and a divisive sense of humor. But now, as a string of bizarre confrontations and disturbing footage circulate online, everyone is asking the same question: has DJ Akademiks finally crossed a line that he cannot come back from? There's a palpable tension rippling through the industry. On one side, fans and artists who've tired of Akademiks' antics are applauding what looks like the end of his era. On the other, longtime followers are stunned, wondering how things escalated to this. The meltdown was dramatic, the responses were swift, and the consequences are only just beginning to unfold. If you thought you'd heard everything about mainstream hip-hop drama, think again. This latest revelation could shape the conversation around rap culture for a long time to come. To understand how DJ Akademiks ended up here, you have to look back at the foundation he built over the last decade. He first appeared on the scene through YouTube channels covering the Chicago drill movement, offering commentary that was equal parts sensationalist and comedic. Some called it raw, others thought it was exploitative. Either way, it grabbed attention. His rapid-fire takes, combined with a knack for stirring up controversy, made him impossible to ignore. Where most commentators tried to keep a safe distance from the artists they covered, Akademiks seemed hell-bent on inserting himself directly into hip-hop's core. If there was a conflict, he'd magnify it with dramatic headlines. If a superstar hinted at new music, he'd speak on it as though he had insider access. Over time, he found himself connected with many influential figures, particularly Drake. That alliance gave Akademiks a semblance of credibility he otherwise might not have enjoyed. With Drake's name casually on his lips, he could position himself as an insider with special knowledge. Yet, in all these years of climbing to a media peak, there were always signs of trouble. He had dust-ups with rappers like Vic Mensa, got into petty online beefs, and faced repeated accusations that he lacked real empathy for serious issues. These might have been written off as mere attention-grabbing stunts, until recently. Now, in hindsight, all those minor clashes look like warm-ups for the colossal explosion we're witnessing today. The final straw came through a clip that went viral for all the wrong reasons. It showed Akademiks engaged in a conversation with someone less than half his age, someone widely regarded as a kid. In the footage, Akademiks displayed behavior that many labeled as bizarre and completely inappropriate. Even to casual observers, the power dynamic looked unsettling. For a moment, the entire hip-hop community collectively paused. It wasn't just the content of what Akademiks said, though that alone was disturbing. It was also the smug way he carried himself, as though this kind of talk was normal in certain corners of the industry. Longtime critics of Akademiks felt a grim sense of validation. They'd long accused him of crossing ethical lines. Fans who'd overlooked his past blunders suddenly found themselves with no defense. The meltdown opened everyone's eyes. The backlash was instant. Social media erupted in disbelief, followed by a wave of anger. Competing commentators took this chance to roast him, and even some of his former allies seemed hesitant to speak up in his defense. It was as if the entire culture had collectively decided, enough is enough. Just how bad could things get from here? Within days, the fallout extended beyond social media sniping. Behind closed doors, record labels and industry insiders who once used Akademiks as a promotional funnel began whispering about severing ties. Sure, controversy can generate clicks, but public outcry against such unsettling behavior is hardly a wise marketing move. Rumors circulated that certain artists, previously indifferent to Akademiks' antics, were quietly removing him from their media plans. Fellow streamers and influencers piled on. Some posted reaction videos dissecting his meltdown frame by frame, pointing out the absurdity of an adult egging on a minor in any questionable context. Others simply posted memes portraying him as desperate for attention. The optics couldn't have been worse. Even those who claimed to remain neutral admitted that these scenes went far beyond typical Akademiks drama. Behind the scenes, it became clear just how intertwined Akademiks was with many powerful figures. Labels found themselves in a tight spot. Do they call him out directly, knowing it might spark his ire in future streams? Or do they quietly let the relationship fade away? So far, the trend seems to lean toward quiet exits. The same man who once held a near monopoly on YouTube hip-hop commentary was suddenly too toxic to touch. The downfall was no longer speculation, it was unfolding in real time, bit by bit, contract by contract. You can't talk about Akademiks without mentioning his bond with Drake. Over the years, Akademiks positioned himself as a near-official mouthpiece for Drake's camp, defending every perceived slight and amplifying the hype for every major release. Many argued this connection was the main reason Akademiks managed to stay relevant. If Drake is the biggest artist in the world, who wouldn't want to cozy up to the platform that praises him non-stop? Now, amid all these controversies, Akademiks dragged Drake's name into the conversation once again. This time, though, it felt desperate. He tried suggesting that those attacking him were also out to undermine Drake, as if they were part of a larger conspiracy. His rants painted a picture where Drake versus Kendrick Lamar encompassed more than just music. It was an ideological battleground for fans. In Akademiks' mind, the entire meltdown was orchestrated by Kendrick fans who'd always hated him. The question is whether Drake truly stands behind Akademiks at this point, or if he's distancing himself silently. Drake rarely issues explicit public statements for or against controversies unless they affect him directly, but the buzz in certain corners of social media suggests that Drake's team might be uncomfortable. Whether that discomfort translates to severed ties remains to be seen. Regardless, the mere fact that Drake's name is part of this fiasco only amplifies the spectacle. Instead of shining a favorable spotlight on Akademiks, Drake's involvement might drag them both into deeper controversy, particularly if fans believe the meltdown and Drake's brand are interlinked. The meltdown took another strange twist when Akademiks, in a fit of defensive rage, claimed that Kendrick Lamar's fan base was orchestrating his downfall. He trotted out the notion that there was some elaborate plot to expose him as the villain, in line with Kendrick's lyrical critiques about the shallow nature of certain fans and commentators. For many, it felt like a stretch. For Akademiks, it was the only explanation he could latch onto. Kendrick Lamar once rapped about fraudulent industry players, hypocritical fans, and media figures who manipulate hip-hop narratives. The track Not Like, which Akademiks referenced, had lines that could be interpreted in many ways, but many fans read it as a direct shot at hollow commentary and the fandom around certain big-name stars. To Akademiks, these lyrical jabs felt personal. He'd built his brand on sensational coverage and sometimes shady tactics, and Kendrick's music has often championed artistry over superficial hype. Now, as the meltdown reveals just how deep Akademiks' questionable behavior runs, Kendrick's lines take on new meaning. Listeners revisit the song with fresh ears, linking its message to Akademiks' demise. In a sense, this controversy illustrates a broader cultural rift. On one side, you have fans seeking depth and authenticity. On the other, you have an ecosystem fueled by gossip, memes, and manufactured drama. As Akademiks falls, many argue it proves that Kendrick's warnings about the industry's worst elements were always spot on. If you thought Akademiks' initial slip-up was bad, his subsequent attempts to defend himself only turned the situation into a full-blown circus. Rather than issue a humble apology or even a subdued explanation, he doubled down with an expletive-laden rant on his livestream. He claimed he'd done nothing wrong, blaming the entire uproar on trolls and jealous haters. Instead of quelling the outrage, his words gave new life to the controversy. In a particularly puzzling move, Akademiks started calling out other streamers he once considered friends, like Kai Cenat. He accused them of betrayal for not publicly taking his side. At one point, he boasted he was bigger than any of them and didn't need their platforms. The insults flew fast, and the meltdown's intensity grew. Instead of returning to normal, each broadcast he released dug him deeper into a hole. The unspoken question echoed across the internet. Why not just apologize, or at the very least lay low until the storm passes? Among the people he roped into his tirade was, unsurprisingly, Drake once again. By insisting that Drake was still in his corner, he seemed to suggest a sort of righteous alliance, as though they were both being unfairly targeted. The irony, of course, is that if Drake remains silent, Akademiks appears to be name-dropping him for clout. And if Drake does speak, it risks lending legitimacy to the meltdown. Either way, the entire fiasco underscores how disconnected from reality Akademiks might be. Each frantic stream, each misguided attempt to shift blame, only cements the perception that he's spiraling out of control. Behind every fiery controversy lies the quiet hum of business decisions. Labels, streaming platforms, and advertisers pay close attention to the court of public opinion. While having a love him or hate him reputation once kept Akademiks relevant and in demand, there's a tipping point when scandal becomes too toxic. Insiders whisper that certain label teams have officially walked away, choosing not to feature their artists on his platforms. Some claim even established artists are refusing to do any form of interview or collaboration with him. For Akademiks, this backlash stings. His entire brand relies on exclusives, inside scoops, and the aura of having a front row seat to rap's biggest stars. If that pipeline of access dries up, so does his influence. Imagine being known as a commentator who can't land interviews or find new artists to feature. That scenario looms large, and as negative headlines continue swirling, the question becomes, is there any way he can redeem himself? To many, he's gone too far. The meltdown wasn't a casual misstep. It involved a minor, and it exposed a mindset that made even his longtime viewers cringe. While hip-hop culture can forgive a lot, especially if you bring drama that drives clicks, there are still lines that can't be crossed without lasting consequences. It appears Akademiks might have found that line at last. So here we are, witnessing the possible end of DJ Akademiks' once dominant reign in hip-hop commentary. After years of teetering on the edge, that final tumble may have arrived, triggered by an ill-advised interaction, magnified by his refusal to show remorse. The same mouth that once boosted him to prominence now threatens to bury him under a mountain of controversies and unanswered questions. Yet, there's a broader question that remains. In a culture where drama and sensationalism often overshadow the music itself, does Akademiks' downfall signal a real change, or is it just a temporary fascination until the next scandal? Will the industry truly cut ties for good, or will he find a way to bounce back by tapping into our collective appetite for controversy? Only time will tell how deep these repercussions go. For now, we're left with an unsettling image of the hip-hop commentary landscape, exposing layers of moral ambiguity, corporate politics, and personal misjudgments. If one good thing emerges from this chaos, it might be a renewed conversation about accountability in a space that's often thrived on shock value. Will DJ Akademiks reinvent himself, or has he run out of second chances? Let the discussion continue, because in this era of hip-hop, where reality and spectacle collide daily, it's anyone's guess what revelations might surface next.